I'm 42 and I've been a gamer for over 35 years. And these days I play almost all my games on handhelds, whether it's the Switch 2, SteamDeck, or even this little old school retro emulator thing that looks a bit like a Game Boy. My PS5 and Xbox haven't been turned on since I moved into this house nearly a year ago, and I only use my PC to make Football Manager videos for YouTube. But I still play games at least an hour or two most days, and honestly, I've never enjoyed it more. If you're a fellow older gamer or a handheld lover, make sure you subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video to let me know you want to see more ones just like this. But for now, it's story time. Because I've been playing on handhelds for almost as long as I've been gaming. In fact, my very quick early year gaming history development, Christmas 1990, I got a Nintendo Entertainment System and a little 14-inch portable TV for my bedroom. Greatest Christmas present ever. Loved it. Obviously not handheld. Loved it. The following Christmas, me and my brother both got Game Boys with the little suitcase carry case thing. I don't ever remember having a huge number of games for it. Certainly not initially. I remember having Tetris. I had Super Mario Land, it was called, wasn't it? I remember having a WWF game. And I don't remember a lot else in those early days, although I had that Game Boy for years. Still had it when Pokemon came round almost 10 years later. Remember sitting there in the sixth form common room in the late 90s playing Pokemon on my original grey, black and white Game Boy with the little cable connecting to my friends so that we could swap Pokemon with each other. But I'm getting ahead of myself because Christmas 92, that's when I got my Mega Drive. My brother got his Super Nintendo and his TV that year. And yeah, never really looked back. Pretty much between me and my brother, we had every console for the rest of the 90s. And once I became an adult, I have had every console and every handheld, mainstream handheld. It's harder to say that now, but I pretty much had everyone since. I don't have all the different PC emulator and retro handhelds these days, but we'll get back round to what I'm using now in a little while. I do remember as a kid being super jealous of the few friends that I had that had a Game Gear because it was colour. I never had one. My brother never had one. I only played one maybe once or twice. I remember Columns. As a colourblind person, even I could be fascinated by Columns, and Sonic the Hedgehog in colour on a handheld was a phenomenon. There's me playing Super Mario Land on a weird little green pixely screen, and my mate's there with his super fancy Game Gear that felt like it was almost as big as a SteamDeck is now, but I imagine it was half the size, but it felt huge in my tiny little hands. I do tell people that I once saw an Atari Lynx as well. I'm still not sure if I'm making that up or not, and it just became true because I've said it. I'm not 100% sure that they actually existed. I still don't even remember seeing them at retro gaming conventions, but yeah, colour handhelds were very exciting. Obviously, batteries were a nightmare, but I had the whole light magnifier thing to go on top of my Game Boy as well. And yeah, we would get through some rechargeable batteries. No plugging them in to charge them back then. There was a spell in the mid to late 90s where I did shift more towards the consoles. The Game Boy had been out a while. There hadn't really been a successor. I don't remember exactly when the Game Boy Color came out, but I know I never had one. I never bothered with that. I feel like maybe some of my friends were playing on, if not a Game Boy Color, one of those smaller Game Boys that wasn't grey, probably still with a black and white screen. But I remember at the time thinking, I've got a big piece of junk and everyone else has got a shiny new thing. And Pokemon kind of got me back into handheld gaming for a bit, but then I left school, left home, had my own TV, my own living room, and obviously filled that up with Xbox, PlayStation, Dreamcast, that kind of thing. I didn't ever move completely away from handheld gaming though. Like I said, I've had every handheld pretty much since the Game Boy. I had a Game Boy Advance in the early 2000s. Remember loving Advance Wars. Don't remember a lot else around it. And to be honest, I was spending more of my time playing on the home consoles. The DS I loved from the moment it first came out. The 3DS, Stream Pass on a 3DS, still one of my favorite gaming experiences. It's up there with Pokemon Go as just an incredible piece of gaming, real life innovation. I can't believe we don't have a Street Pass equivalent on these things or even these things in 2025. It seems bonkers that I know the technology's in these because it was working during COVID, because it made sure that we knew if we were passing anyone who was poorly. So it could have something like Street Pass in, and they just don't. And I imagine it is a privacy thing. That is why we don't. But loved all that. The PSP, when the PlayStation Portable finally came out, it was like the Game Gear all over again. I was so excited. You can even play Football Manager on it. And then the PlayStation Vita was my first ever day one handheld purchase, because I'd loved the PSP. I was super duper into gaming. The Mature Gamer podcast, our podcast that we've been doing for like 15 years, that was a thing. By the time the Vita came out, I remember sitting there waiting for it to arrive on day one, absolutely loving it. And for a long time, certainly until the Switch, the PlayStation Vita was my favorite console ever, because it was my first real exposure to indie games. I'd always been a console guy. I was never really a PC gamer, aside from Football Manager and Civ and some of the bigger games, but I'd never really explored Steam or indie games. And then all of a sudden we had this really cool little PlayStation handheld that I wasn't that interested in, like the AAA, like the Uncharted game that came with it. I thought was a pile of gimmicky nonsense. But some of the indie games, I remember when I was in hospital having my kidney stones removed, I remember just the whole time there playing Thomas Was Alone on my PlayStation Vita. And then they re-released Persona 4. I had never heard of this game. As far as I was concerned, JRPGs were not for me. They were for nerds. I didn't understand them. I didn't want any part of them. I despite playing games all through the 90s, being a console guy, never touched Final Fantasy or anything like that. But Persona 4 Golden on the Vita is still up there as one of my most perfect gaming experiences ever. It was an incredible game that I still love and have replayed several times since on the Switch, on the SteamDeck. But it just paired so perfectly with the platform that it was on. It was made for handheld. It was perfect. And even now, I can see myself lying on the sofa in our living room in our old house with my PlayStation Vita playing Persona 4. It's sunny outside, Anna's playing something on our console on the TV, and I'm having the time of my life. It was brilliant. And then the Switch happened, and was even better than the Vita, because it took everything that I loved about the Vita. It brought all those indie games, that incredible handheld experience, but then threw in all of the Nintendo sparkle and awesomeness. And obviously we've had the Switch, closely followed by the Steam Deck, which brought my whole Steam library that I'd been accumulating for years and never really playing. Suddenly I now had that as a handheld. We've obviously recently had the Switch 2. We've had the rise of these little retro handheld things, which I have played through all of the old Pokemon games on this. It is brilliant, and the battery life is much better than what we had on the Game Boy way back then as well. This has got thousands of games on, and I pretty much just use it as a Pokemon emulator, which I realized I could do on my Steam Deck, but there's just something about playing those older Pokemon games on this form factor rather than this form factor that means they're better on this, and I love this. It was like 35 quid. You can hear it rattle. But it's a brilliant bit of kit. If you want one, it's an Anbernic, RG35XX. I got it off TikTok Shop. This isn't a TikTok Shop promo. I do have a link on my TikTok, but obviously I can't link to it here, but it's a great bit of kit. If you're looking for a cheap little retro console, you do have to get the games yourself though. Luckily, I already owned them all, so it was completely legal. While all this was going on though, and I was falling deeper and deeper in love with handheld gaming, weirdly, never got involved in the mobile or tablet gaming revolution. Never really enjoyed mobile gaming. Pokemon Go aside, my phone has always been for phone things and my games stuff is for game things, and I've never really mixed the two together. Same with iPads. I've never really played games on the iPad. I don't know why. I guess I'm a clumsy oaf who prefers to have an actual tangible physical controller. We did have one of those big bracket things that we were given as a brand deal years ago that you could kind of wrap around your phone and make it look like a Switch. And that was cool, but I'd rather just play on the thing that's made to do it. I don't want to run my phone battery down playing games on it. I think that's probably what caused all that. But as we went through the Vita and then the Switch, the rise of these handheld consoles that were doing home console quality gaming, at least the home console quality gaming I was used to from the past, my handheld gaming time just kept going up and up and up. And as a consequence of that, my actual console gaming time fell. And as all this was going on, the types of games that I played, the types of games that I enjoyed was changing as well. Back in the 90s, the 2000s, when I was very much console guy, I was really into the sports games and the action games, not just the football stuff, although there was the football stuff, FIFA, Pro Evo, Sensible Soccer, but I enjoyed Brian Lara cricket, Tiger Woods golf. I remember Pete Sampras tennis on the Mega Drive because you could plug extra controllers into the cartridge. Loved a sports game, but also lost hours on like action shooter games, BioShock, Gears of War, Halo, Borderlands, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, and none of those games, none of the sports games, none of the action games really translate very well to a handheld. Anyone who's tried to play Oblivion Remastered on this thing will know that those kind of games don't really translate very well to a handheld. So the games I played were keeping me on the home consoles for a long time, as much as the hardware itself was. But things have changed in recent years. I'm old now. My eyesight's going. My reflexes are slowing down. I was never a great gamer, but now I'm a terrible gamer. And as I've got worse at gaming in general has moved more and more online. And I hate multiplayer games. I always did, because when I was a kid, my friends were always better than me. I'm colorblind and clumsy and don't have very good hand-eye coordination. As a competitive gamer, I am a nightmare. And yeah, I just kind of got to the point where those games that I'd grown up loving, the sports games, the action games, the shooty games, in order to get the most out of them, although they would still have single player elements, but the bulk of the investment and the development in those games was going into the profitable bit, the online, the multiplayer. And I just didn't enjoy and don't enjoy going online, having some little dweeb giving it all that in my ears whilst I'm losing. It's not a fun experience. I don't really enjoy it. And it means I've started to play far less of those sports games and those action games that I always loved. But I am still a gamer. I enjoy like shutting myself off from the world and disappearing into a video game. So I had to find a new type of game to fill that void. And that's where I gradually, and this was not a conscious effort. I mentioned Persona 4 being like the gateway for this. I would say another gateway for this was probably Animal Crossing during the pandemic. But I found myself slowly moving towards RPGs, especially those JRPGs that in the past I always thought were for total nerds. But indie games, cozy games, more and more of this kind of stuff that I just wouldn't have touched with a barge pole 10 years ago. But right now, I've had my shiny new toy a couple of weeks. The Switch 2 has been out, and I am absolutely obsessed with Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma. I'm like 35 hours in. I've got 4 farms set up across 4 different villages. I've married, and this is the way she's described in game. This isn't me being problematic. I have married a buxom goddess. I'm friends with every non-playable character. I'm slowly plodding my way through the main story, taking on the boss battles at my own pace on the easiest difficulty setting, because I hate boss battles, I hate losing, and I am loving this game. It was one of my favorite games I've played in the last few years. And like I say, the transition kind of took me by surprise. It started to transition with Persona 4, Animal Crossing. I remember Tomodachi Life on the 3DS was probably my first, what I would describe as a proper cozy game. Stuff like Harvest Moon, the earlier Animal Crossing games, never touched them, was never interested. That all passed me by completely. But I think Animal Crossing, like I say, when I was sick with COVID and literally locked in a room for like 2 weeks, it was the start of those 2 weeks was like the day Animal Crossing came out. So I downloaded it on my Switch and just played it all day, fell in love with it. I'd already had Stardew Valley, certainly on the Switch. Was that on the Vita too? I feel like it might have been, but I've been playing Disney Dreamlight Valley on my SteamDeck a lot. Persona 3, 4 and 5, they've all been released for Steam, for Switch as handheld remakes. But then some of the newer, what you would previously consider AAA games can now run on stuff like this. So I'm now getting into playing games that I probably never would have touched previously because it's just convenient for me to play them on this. My favorite game of the last year or so, Metaphor Refantasio. If you haven't tried it, if you enjoy Persona, you've got to try Metaphor. It's the best Persona game ever made, even though it's not a Persona game, but I played that exclusively on the Steam Deck. I played through Baldur's Gate 3 exclusively on the Steam Deck. Dragon Age, the Veilguard, all the way through on the Steam Deck. And it's just That's what I do now. I'm playing games that are heavy on story. They're turn-based or really easy, simple, like one-button combat. I don't want to learn a complicated combat system. I enjoy having lots of friends to make within the game and doing silly little odd jobs like farming and life sims and stuff like that. I want slow pace, easy difficulty, no risk of failure, no having to constantly repeat sections because I'm not very good at them. I don't want to die. I think I went through the whole of Dragon Age never dying once because I played it on the easiest difficulty setting, and that's how I want to play a game. And I lose hours to these games. They tickle a particular part of my antisocial little autistic brain that my meathead past just couldn't get near. I always enjoyed games. Now I love games. And those games that I'm describing are all perfectly suited to handheld gaming. It all kind of comes back together. I can pick up and play them whenever and wherever I am. The development that we had, I forget where it first started. Was it the Vita? Was it the Switch? I know all the modern home consoles do it as well, but being able to be playing a game, we'll use the Switch 2 as an example now. So you can see I am in a game. The game is just open. You can see I've saved it, but I'm in the game. But now I can just turn the console off, put it down, and then the next day, as long as it doesn't run out of battery, but the next day, turn it back on and be at the exact same point. Being able to do that, just turn the console on and off and not have to load up the game and not have to wait, that's such a removal of a barrier to playing games. It's incredible. It's a genuinely, excuse the pun, a game changer. I can now play that for a 10-minute burst or a 5-hour just rotting session. I've got docks for them. I bought the dock that goes with the SteamDeck. I understand this came with a dock, which is, I guess, is still in the box because I haven't even looked for it. I don't play them docked. I play them exclusively handheld. I can play them in bed. I can sit with Anna in the living room and play them with my headphones on while she's on the PS5, on the big telly. I can play them while I'm traveling on a plane, on a train, the Eurotunnel, a boat, hotels. I can play them on the toilet. I'm gaming more than I've ever gamed before. And it's not that I'm kind of forced into it by what I mentioned before, Anna playing on the PS5. Because when the kids moved out a few years ago, we tried the dream for a gamer couple, the 2 big console setup in our living room. We got a new sofa so we could sit side by side. We took over one wall of our living room and we had 2 TV cabinets, 2 big TVs, 2 PS5s, 2 Xboxes, 2 Switch docks. And I probably played on that setup maybe 3 times. I spent more time in that living room. That was at our old house. We didn't even bother bringing that over here. We moved a lot of that stuff up to our bedroom. Because I just wasn't using it. But I spent more time sat next to her on that sofa playing in handheld mode on my Switch or my SteamDeck. And the docks for those things were plugged into the TV, but I prefer them in handheld mode. So I spent more time playing those consoles in handheld mode than I did actually playing on the consoles that we'd spent all that time and money and redesigned our living room to fit in. There's just something about handheld gaming. It's like reading a book. It's more personal. It's more focused. I become more immersed and absorbed in it than I do when I'm sat at a desk or sat in front of the big TV. Handheld gaming is like reading a book. It's personal. It's immersive. Playing on a home console or on a PC is like watching TV or watching a movie, which I know a lot of people love, but I've always been more of a reader than a watcher. And I think that's why handheld gaming suits me so perfectly. And I think it's got to the point now where I think I'm just going to sell my PS5. We did have 3 at one point. We had one in the living room, that's Anna's. We had one in our bedroom, which is my old one from our old living room. And I've got one in my office that I use for making content. We've already got rid of the one from the bedroom. And I think I'm going to sell the one for my office as well, because I've not turned it on since I've lived here. We've lived here nearly a year. It's just not been turned on. The only game I would possibly use on it is EAFC. And I just got it on PC this year because it was easier. Less hassle than having to plug the PlayStation into my computer. I have an Xbox, but it's not in here. I guess it's in the bedroom. Don't even know where it is. We're probably going to get rid of that as well. Because if I can play EAFC on the PC for content, it's probably all I'm going to do anyway. And there's rumours we're going to get a proper handheld version of EAFC on the Switch 2 anyway, which we've never had on the Steam Deck because of anti-cheating issues. But if we can get a proper full fat version of EAFC with Ultimate Team on a handheld, I don't need the fancy graphics. I just want to be able to play my Ultimate Team and open a few packs. If I can do that on the Switch 2, I will never need a home console again. It's bonkers. And at the end of the day, if that doesn't pan out and I really do get the urge to play some FIFA later in the year, that ROG Ally Xbox handheld's coming out later in the year, so I might just get myself another handheld, get back on the Xbox bandwagon. So yeah, I mean, I realise I've waffled for a good 20 minutes or so there, but to summarise, I am pretty much exclusively a handheld gamer now, and I honestly think it's the best way to play, at least for the games that I love. And that is coming from a guy who's owned every console since the NES. I've got the high-end NASA supercomputer gaming PC, and I don't use them for recreational gaming at all. All I need to play games are my little handhelds, or my sometimes not so little handhelds. These things are enormous. Luckily, I also have enormous hands. And I'm happy, and I'm having a lovely time with it. What about you? Have you made the switch to handhelds, or are you sticking firmly with PC or console? Let me know down in the comments, and while you're down there, feel free to leave me some game recommendations for relaxed, cozy games or RPGs, because I always want more. And if you've enjoyed that video, make sure you subscribe to the channel with your notifications on, of course. Leave a lovely thumbs up on the video, and thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you next Tuesday.